Welcome back to another episode of the Good Morning Minute podcast. I'm your host, Angelina Mojica, certified family life educator, life coach, and founder of Empower Her Steps. This season, we're entering a powerful new series called Rooted, Restoring the Fruit of the Spirit, a journey into identity, healing, and spiritual growth. In this season, we're not just talking about behavior or habits, we are looking deeper into the roots of who we are, what shapes us, what wounded us, and how God restores identity one fruit at a time. Each episode features real conversations with real people who have experienced the pruning, the stretching, the storms, and the restoration of the fruit of the Spirit in their lives. Today, I'm honored to welcome Pamela. Pamela is our guest today, and she is a transformational mentor, author, and powerful voice for healing in midlife and beyond. Pamela helps men and women 40 and over break free from the emotional pain of their past and step boldly into their personal power. After surviving 32 years in an abusive marriage, Pamela devoted over 2,000 hours to studying neuroscience, healing, and human behavior. She is also the author of Treasure, a self-help memoir guiding readers to uncover the gifts hidden inside their hardest season. Pamela, I want to say welcome to the show. I'm excited to get to know you further.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, yeah, I know I did an intro and we said all the accolades that you've overcome or just achieved. So tell us a little bit about who you are in what season of life you are in right now.
I am in a beautiful season of life. I really am. So, after many years of living in an environment that was, very challenging, I have come to a place where I have actually just harnessed the gifts of all of those experiences, like, and kind of left behind the pain. And I like to say I've gone from hardship to harvest. And every day I wake up with just gratitude and appreciation for what I have been through and where it has brought me to. A place of peace, a
Mm.
place of emotional freedom that I didn't even know would be possible, but it has been. And it's all, everything I do is based, I created a method of healing called the positive perspective method, and it's changed my life. And it's worked with hundreds of women to this point, and it's a way to heal without pain,
Mm.
because you're not looking at hurt, you're looking at the value you received, so it's actually put you in a really beautiful place, and that's where I live, in that space now.
I love that. That gives us such a beautiful picture and starting point to understand who you are today. So now what I'd like to do is shift into our theme for this season, Rooted, and talk about how the fruit of the Spirit has been shaping or restoring your identity. So you did mention, Pamela, overcoming a very toxic relationship, but in that developing a healing process. So when you think about that fruit of the Spirit, which fruit is most connected to your journey right now, and what part of your story makes that fruit so meaningful?
When you talk about fruit, what do you mean? Can
Yeah,
you
so
clarify?
fruit of the spirit. So what part of the spirit, and so the spiritual fruits are your love, your peace, your kindness, genuineness, self-control, just to name a few. Um, where do you think you are connecting in your journey right now?
I am, my heart is always full of love. It really, every minute of every day. But kindness, I have an compassion and kindness for the people around me and society as a whole. And it's just an understanding of myself and everybody. It's a more place of acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
So I do lead with kindness. I actually say what I do, the healing method that I do, and the people I work with, I try and help people with kind hearts who have been hurt by hurt people. So kindness is actually at the forefront of everything in my life.
I love that. Did you ever find when you were going through your situations in life, did you ever find kindness to be a struggle?
Um, it was not for me.
Okay.
I have a belief that I will, even though I've lived through a lot of struggle and pain, I will not change the good parts of me for anybody else. I will not adjust to somebody else's bad behavior. I will always look for the good and live based on my values. So just because I'm being hurt, I'm not going to mistreat people or do anything. So kindness has always been at the forefront of how I choose to live. It doesn't mean the world's kind back, but I will always choose kindness when it comes from me.
Okay. And that I think that is important because what that tells me is there was some integrity in regards to who you wanted to be, even when you were receiving, hurt or people were being unkind to you in the midst of your storm. That just tells me there was integrity, like you were not going to let this change or define you, because you were going to continue to be who you were meant to be. I love that. And so you did mention peace. At any time, was peace a struggle for you?
Yes, yes. Peace was a struggle. Because when you're in the storm, uh, it's kind of it was stripped away for
Mhm.
me, and it was more about hanging on, surviving, and peace seemed like a distant land. I
Yeah.
don't even think there came a moment where I, when I went into survival mode, I didn't even hope for it anymore. And actually, not hoping for peace or dreams gave me actually space to survive within, you know,
Hmm.
my daily life. And it actually made it easier for me because it peace is such a beautiful way of being and feeling. And sometimes you can't achieve that when you're in the midst of a storm,
Hmm.
you know. So
Yeah, I do know. Unfortunately, I've been through a situation similar. Um, I th and it's funny because you mentioned survival in the midst of this, and sometimes we do. Sometimes we do have to let go of hope and peace when we're going through these things just to survive. And I work with children that come from hard places, and I've worked for many years with young mothers, and that a lot is their story is I'm just surviving, and so they tend to lose the connection to what makes us human, the feelings and the emotions, and they tend to put those aside, and I've been guilty of it myself in my own journey, just so that you can make it through whatever it is that you're going through. So in that process, what were some of the things that started to surface for you during this time? And, how did you rewrite those belief systems? Because I know you start building an identity up from that for sure.
yes. So when I was living in, because I spent over 3 decades. So I was in that relationship for 35 years, married for 32. And I just I actually became like a version of myself. It is the strangest thing. And I even say it in my book is so I was isolated from my family. I have a beautiful family, but then I was isolated and rarely saw them at all. And so they even said they lost me. And then when I became free, which it was by an anonymous caller, I never took action of myself. I was in the full victim mode the entire time. And
Mhm.
somebody, an anonymous caller, called, and the state of Florida took him away and arrested him and pressed charges. I didn't ever do anything. So it shows how stuck in the victim mindset that I was, that I never felt like I had the power. And the next day, I got back with my family, and they said to me, you're the exact same person you were 35 years ago. Like we lost you for 35 years, because I was always just, existing kind of thing. And,
Yeah.
but I was 100% found my path again the moment I became free. It's like a beautiful thing. And I don't even know how that happened, but I feel that, I had a path to follow and that I just got off that path by getting myself into this relationship and then just adapted. But I kept deep down inside me my true authentic self. It's just I kept that hidden. And then it resurfaced. So it was a very interesting. I still think to myself now, and I still learn every day something new, about myself. Like I'm still having all this self discovery that I guess I just packed it away and didn't pay attention to like certain thoughts and just kind of went with the flow.
Hmm.
And it's very interesting how that happened. And I just had something come up recently. I was doing a speaking event at this place called the French Chateau, and I have two children. And you just mentioned that about the children, right? How are the children affected? And I my children never once witnessed physical abuse.
Wow.
And even when the day my husband got arrested, my son was at work. One of them had already moved out of the house, but my other son was at work and he would time it. And a lady at that event came up to me and she said, "What about your children? Are they okay? Because you said you work with children." And I realized that part of the manipulation was on purpose because I would not have stayed if my children had to witness
Hmm.
that, and I didn't realize that until this year that that was true for me. It was
Hmm.
part of the process. You know, I know that kind of takes me off a little bit on the subject, but it's interesting how you just discover things and things that make you stay and then things that make you leave.
Yeah.
But I never even realized it. And I thought I was, you know, I pretty much know everything about how I feel, what I went through. But no, I'm still missing a few pieces, I guess. So it's interesting to discover
Yeah.
those.
No, and I think it's interesting that you bring it up because it's not necessarily taking us off topic per se, but it definitely is highlighting that survivor mentality, and victim can also be in there, but survivor mentality is like you push everything away, your feelings, your emotions, like everything, because you are so focused in making it through whatever situation it is. And so as you're stepping out of survivor mode, right? You're stepping out of survivor mode. And I think this is important because when we talk about neuroscience and, the trauma that how it impacts your brain and stuff. So if your brain's flooded with that stress hormone all the time, the cortisol, and it's just flooded, I mean, you're not really able to process information, much less really analyze the situation because your brain is so stimulated from that stress hormone that it's unable to even have a rational thought at that moment because you're it's anxiety and you're just looking to, okay, I'm being very aware of what's going on outside of me because if I need to shift in a direction really fast, I need to be able to do that. And so you're not rationalizing, you're just focused on what do I need to do so that I can stay intact and survive through whatever situation's coming. So I like that you're bringing that up because as you go to into your healing and through your book, I'm sure that was a healing moment for you as well. You are stepping out of that. So your brain is starting to rewire itself. So you are going to be discovering these things about what you felt or just different, realizing like, oh, wow, I didn't know that this is how I felt at that time, or, even make that connection. So I love that you're sharing that with our listeners. Um, so let's talk a little bit more about the healing and this discovering that you are having about yourself and where you are now. Um, what were some of the practices, maybe some grounding tools or community supports that help you find your way through this and in that healing process?
Yeah, so my healing process started in therapy. So when I had PTSD and I started with therapy. And of course, the traditional therapy, it opens a lot of conversation and wounds, and it what felt heavy, and then I was having anxiety attacks. So that they taught me several coping techniques, which I absolutely loved. I loved the tapping. The tapping for me would settle me down. And I remember them saying, like the butterfly, and that would really help me. But I realized, so over the course of a couple years, I really struggled and found myself needing coping techniques. I meditate every day, but now I'm at a place where I meditate every day just for the inner peace and calm. Before I needed to kind of regulate myself before I would go out into the world. And but it's like layers, just like you said. You make it through one healing layer and it opens up another, and then you make it through that and it opens up another. And I remember about 2 years into my healing of going to therapy on a regular basis, and of course at that time there was also a lot of stress, the process of divorce, the process of going to the courthouse, things that are taking you back into you can't just leave the situation, you're still involved.
Yeah.
And but once I got past that and I could kind of give myself a little freedom, I started reconnecting with my family and starting to feel love from people around me, and starting to bring safety back into my life. And that was beautiful. And then I went back into the workforce on a regular basis at an office and started meeting people and friends. So at first I was very guarded from that because I was used to, when the walls came down, is what I say. This is a like an interesting thing. When you're in that environment or anybody's in anything toxic, you put up these walls that you think protect you, but they actually keep you trapped. But when the walls are gone, it's like a panic because it's like, I need those to feel safe and to adjust, to realize, no, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
That whole process in itself, just getting comfortable with not being in the environment I was used to for so long, was a big transition, you know.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
but I journal, I meditate, I do all of the self-help items. And one thing, once I got past the panic attacks and clearing the PTSD and the massive anxiety, I started to build my strength, my emotional strength.
Mm-hmm.
And like saying no to things, because I'm a typical people pleaser, always trying to overhelp, trying to over control, things that I thought were strengths, but they were
Mm-hmm.
just me being afraid to release anything that I wanted to keep my power.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm much more comfortable with just accepting, and not having to control everything. And it's a real growth moment. I remember I was at church. This is what was big for me. I was at church and it was right around Easter, and they were doing a fast and pray,
Mm-hmm.
which was so wonderful. And so you give up something and then you pray, but it had where it taught you, okay, write a prayer. And it said, do you find it difficult to ask for things? It said that was one of the things. And I said, yes, that's my difficult thing. And they said that just means you're afraid of, accepting, or afraid of being open. And I didn't realize that was it, and that was such a beautiful moment. And on that day, it changed the way I viewed how I was, some of my behaviors, some of my controlling behaviors. So,
Mm. I
yeah.
love that. And it just makes me want to go back to that peace because it was stripped away from me for so long. The 35 years of living in chaos, where now that you're at a place where you can step back into peace, it's foreign to you. It's kind of uncomfortable because it's the asking and the accepting of help and just being open and vulnerable again because you're without your walls, right? And we should all be able to walk through life without walls build up because it should be peace. Like that's the intent that the Lord has for us is to live in peace. But when it's been stripped away from you for so long, to be in a place where you're not having to worry about what's going to happen next or when is the shoe going to hit the floor again. Um, it is hard. And I can understand it because I see it amongst the children that I work with is they're so used to that chaotic something's going to go flying across the room or somebody's going to get hit in the face or whatever the case may be, that sometimes they bring the chaos with them because they don't know how to live in the peace. They don't know how to do that. And so that's kind of what I'm picking up as far as that goes. But also too, I'm interested because you mentioned your behaviors and the beliefs that you started to rebuild. And I want to go into that just a little bit more. What were some of the things that just subconsciously or maybe even just internally that you had to readjust for yourself so that you could live in that moment of tranquility and just silence and peace? What was that like for you? What were those things that you had to change? And then how did it affect your behaviors and even into your relationships now?
Yes. So the big thing I felt, after a couple years of getting back into society, getting friendships again, and I've stayed a little bit guarded with all
Yeah,
of that.
yeah,
I would sit on my back porch and just relax and enjoy, but there was always something missing. I felt there was like an empty spot, and I would meditate and I'd be happy during meditating. I would journal and I would resolve a lot of questions and get answers for myself through journaling. And I had peace, but I was still missing something. And I was sitting there on my porch and this bird flew over and landed on my bush. And I looked over and it drew my attention to my little garden there. And I looked down, I had some flowers, I had some weeds in there too. And so when the bird left, I walked over and I pulled out the weeds and I threw them in the garbage. And I sat down in the chair and I looked at my garden and I'm like, that's what's going on. I pulled the weeds. I still have flowers, but then where the weeds were, it was just dirt now. It was just dirt. And that actual moment made me think to myself, I need to replant something for me. you know, I
yeah.
I have cleared the weeds out of my life, the things that hurt me, and I'm still tending to my garden, but I didn't replant like the emptiness that was left there. And in that moment, it took a little while because then it's like, well, what do I do? I don't know, what am I supposed to plant there and nurture, for myself, because for me to give to me was really hard. I could give to anyone else my love, my attention, my everything. But for me to accept that for me, I didn't fully have my worth back yet.
Mhm.
I didn't fully see my worth. And it wasn't that I was totally uh, holding my past against me. I just wasn't ready to accept that I had as much value as I have. And that was really affecting several things in my life, not in a bad way. Like the people around me, my
Yeah.
friendships were solid, but me allowing to get that peace, that real deep inner peace,
Mhm.
I needed to see my value again. for just being me, not for what I do for people. I would always be doing this for this one, always saying yes to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Boundaries, forget it. They didn't even exist, but I was like, okay, sure, I can help you with that. Yeah, you want me to move? I'll move, but because I was still didn't realize, but I was just trying to draw from external satisfaction
Mm-hmm.
and not internal. But that was because I hadn't fully seen my value or replanted something that could grow that came from me.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's interesting because it's true. When we pull something out from the roots, it does leave a very large hole there. And it's important for us to fill it because if not, the weeds grow back, right? And so I think that's just something for listeners to really take in whoever's listening right now is like to really take in that when you do remove those things that are, and we call it pruning, but like when you do remove those things that are hindering your growth, it's always important to fill it back in with something that is nurturing to, and you said nurturing to yourself, something that will help build up your worth and that you can just see a beautiful, a fruit that grows from whatever seed it is that you're planting in that spot for sure. Um, Pamela, for someone listening who may be struggling with maybe peace themselves, what truth about identity or healing would you want them to hear from you today?
I would say that to to really look at the stories that they're telling themselves. I find that so many people that I work with don't even realize that some of the stories they're telling themselves aren't their stories. They've been fed to them and it affects their value. It's important to, just because you think it doesn't mean it's true. And I always say, when that voice comes in your head, that inner critic, who is talking to you? Who is telling you that? Because when you look at your life and your major experiences that are clearly not okay, you can see those, but it's the other things that happen in your life, or the comments that maybe your parents made, or a partner made, or a friend, that still kind of changed how you feel about yourself. So to find peace, really pay attention to those voices and decide who is saying that to me. Where does that come from?
Mhm.
And one thing about healing that I found very important, that which is, I didn't realize it until I thought I was fully healed, and then some more stuff came up.
Mhm.
You, when events happen that are, you see them and you experience them and you recognize them and they hurt you, you can accept it, but you have to really go to the deepest emotion that you had to really release it and find peace,
Mhm.
not just the surface level. A
Mhm.
lot of times people think they're anxious at work and they're stressed and I'm never going to get this done and this and that. But you'll do some coping mechanisms and then you'll get past it, but then it'll come back. And you have to, so why are you doing that? Is because you think you're not going to lose your job, but you're acting like you are. But it's because you think somebody will think you're stupid, or somebody thinks you're lazy. There's usually like a deeper item. And then you say to yourself, why do I think that? Where did that come from? And it's usually coming from somewhere in your childhood. And if
Mhm.
you start recognizing those things, then it makes it, it's just that awareness that can bring you peace, because you
Mhm.
realize, oh, that is a story. And then you have to say to yourself, am I, I'm listening to that story? Do I need to? Am I capable? And you find most times that you're, you just allow it to happen because it's something that you've always done.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. The belief system is the root of our identity of who we, believe we are. And when we can really tackle what we believe about ourselves, and that's developed, unfortunately, at such an early age when we have no understanding of identity and, how it's being built or not. Um, we take in all that we're experiencing, and we, for ourselves, whether it was told to us or maybe it was just an interpretation that we made, we built that identity. And so then comes the words, comes the thoughts, comes the actions and behaviors and the habits for sure. Um, and if that's not working for you and if it's not serving you well in life, then you need to really go back into that. Um, Pull out the weeds, pull out the roots, and replant that. And so this is why affirmations are important, because those are the replanting, those are the new seeds that you're putting in its place, so that when those thoughts come back up, because they'll come up from time to time, um you can capture the thoughts and you can say, you know what, that's no longer who I am. Like, I no longer believe that about myself. So it loses its power, and then
Yes.
eventually you no longer struggle with that, so it's a beautiful process that you're mentioning here, Pamela. And I think that it's a powerful reminder that transformation doesn't begin with behavior, it begins with the root. Fruit grows slowly, it takes time, pruning, nurturing, and sometimes storms that reveal what God has been cultivating beneath the surface. Before we close, Pamela, I would like to plant a final seed of encouragement for our listeners. So, if you could leave listeners with one truth to help them become more rooted in God, in identity, and in the fruit of the Spirit, what would it be?
I would say to live by your values and lead with a kind heart and love, and always have God in your life. The power of God is a power that I think every, you know, just needs to be. It's in my life every moment of every day. But
Yeah.
yes, to not feel selfish for living for you first, because your best version of yourself is your best version for the world. Your most the self-love that you can show yourself when it is not selfish. It's actually helps you expand that and radiate that into a ripple effect to the people around you.
Mm.
So it is the foundation for actually being your best version of yourself.
I love that. And before we wrap up, Pamela, where can listeners connect with you? Maybe follow your work or learn more about your ministry or any up and coming projects.
Sure. Well, I have my website, PamelaStarusta.com, and I also have my YouTube channel, which is at Pamela Starusta on YouTube, and I put weekly content there in regards to my sections within my positive perspective method. And my books and journals are available on Amazon. Uh, but yes, but my website would be the all-in-one hub where you can find all of the different things that I do at PamelaStarusta.com for coaching. And also I have resources that are there and exercises that can that people can use for different things like boundaries, self-talk, a variety of things.
Thank you so much, Pamela, for sharing your heart, your healing, and the fruit that God is growing in your life. Your story reminds us that fruit of the Spirit isn't about perfection, it's about restoration. It's all about allowing God to heal the roots so new fruit can grow. And for those of you that are listening out there, as you reflect on today's conversation, I want you to ask yourself, what fruit is God restoring in me right now? And what root is He gently trying to heal? Remember, friends, growth takes time, but every seed planted in faith will produce fruit in due season. So, friends, stay rooted, stay real, and stay growing. Until next time, I'm Angelina Mojica, your life coach, sending you much love, much peace, many blessings.